Listen, Parasite may be the best of the decade, so you know we had to talk about it. Let us explain.
So what we do here on Let Us Explain is dive deep on something that we can't stop thinking about for other people who can't stop thinking about that thing too. That means we'll be talking anything and everything, including spoilers. So you might want to wait until after you've seen Parasite to watch our segment, or not if that's not your thing. But before we jump into spoilers, we want to talk a little more generally about Parasite. I am your co-host, Zachary Shevich, and joining me, he's got a peach allergy. It's Arturo Zurita.
How you guys doing? I've been very excited to see this movie in Toronto. I went to go see it, and this man had so many chances to see it in Toronto, but he was like, nah, I'm going to see it in New York. I'm going to see it in New York. Finally caught it in New York. I'm excited to talk about this. This has been one of my favorite movies of the year. In case you're still here and you haven't seen the movie, this is one of those movies where you can hear about spoilers, still go in and be like, what in the world? I've been calling this a cliche. I've been saying that the poster looks like Good Kid, Mad City. Yeah, well, we're going to remember it just like Good Kid, Mad City years from now, just like we do the Pulp Fiction poster. I'm very curious to know your thoughts because you refused to tell me anything more until we recorded the podcast. So I'm excited to be here, Zach. Is it your best of the decade, too?
I don't know if I'm ready to go best of the decade, but spoiler, I guess, for our opinions, it's definitely my favorite of the year so far. So our best of 2019 lists are going to have a little bit less anticipation around them. I feel like something has claimed that top spot. Although we still got a best of the decade list that we got to talk about. That
we're working on,
We'll see where that ultimately end up. But this is definitely a really, really great film from a really great filmmaker. You know, he's the guy behind Okja, behind The Host, behind one of
Memories
my favorites,
of Murder.
Snowpiercer. He's a guy who did not really need to add to his legacy, but has in a big way. This is the film. I believe this film won Palme d'Or at Cannes earlier this year, and now it's heavily in the discussion for Academy Awards, whether it's going to be the first South Korean film nominated for a Best Foreign Language movie, or if Bong can somehow find his way into Best Director or Best Picture. So we'll be talking about Parasite a lot, I'm sure, throughout the end of the year. We do want to talk about our thoughts about the movie, a movie we liked a lot, Bong Joon-ho's latest. It's an exceedingly clever class comedy combined with a caper. So the story is how a poor family infiltrates the lives of a richer family and the unexpected ramifications of that action. Bong is a filmmaker who has tackled a variety of genre films, from horror to action and thriller. But what is it about Parasite that felt unique to you?
Some of the things off the top of the head was it feels like it's 5 different directors working on a movie in unison. It feels like this man took all of his movies beforehand. Wow, incredible. Some would even say masterpieces already. I know how much you love Okja. I know how much you love Snowpiercer. I love The Host, and I love Memories of Murder. Stepping stones for what this man just made here. Someone had described it to me, and I had pitched this to you as well, as the better version of Us. That's how it was. Someone tweeted that to me. I went in there. Yeah, I saw that completely. As someone who enjoyed Us but didn't think it was all as cohesive as it was.
Yeah, I think I liked Us more than you, and I totally see that comparison.
And you see it as well. It's not even a bad thing. You can still enjoy both movies, but one of these, turns out, as I've been saying, Us took you underground. Now, you should have gone overseas to really get this story over here. How would you describe the movie to someone who hasn't seen it? Because the first thing you do when you describe this, or when you say, hey, check out this movie, Parasite, I don't know if you've gotten the same things, but I get it over and over and over again. Oh, it's Korean. Yes.
Yeah, but that's not really an obstacle with a movie like this. A movie that moves so quickly and is so immediately intriguing. I think one of the things that Bong as a filmmaker is really great at is kind of giving you a sense of a person's life through kind of their actions rather than necessarily their surroundings. Although the surroundings here, the production design is awesome in this movie, as has been on his last few. But there's a way that this family handles themselves. For people who are foreign film aficionados, I feel like it kind of has a little bit of a Shoplifters vibe in just the first 5-10 minutes. Obviously, the movie takes a very different turn than what Shoplifters is about. But the way that this is a family that schemes together and works together and is just kind of scraping by is kind of fun, a fun entry point for it. But I think what it ultimately develops into is like a heist where the heist is like a home life, like they're stealing comfort rather than necessarily monetary gain.
Yeah, like you remember when Inception came out, another one that we've been arguing about how many does Nolan going to have in the best of the decade. We'll let people argue about that in the comments. With Inception, when that was like, it's a heist film, bit of the mind. This is a heist film, bit of a lifestyle. Yeah. And there's so many imageries, not only from the quotes that the characters say throughout the film about having a plan or not having a plan. You know, you can't fail if you don't have a plan. Yeah, well, if you fail and there is no plan, then there's nowhere else to go. From the idea of them always having to go up a hill, something that we've seen in a lot of other movies recently. Joker does this as well, and where him and Zazie Beetz always go down the hill to go back home, but have to go up the stairs, the very, very long stairs, in order to be able to make it to go to work. Because everybody who's rich lives above them. Everybody who's poor lives below, to the point that where they live is in
it's in like a sub-basement level apartment
with the windows that are open, and they exterminate, and they're even called roaches at one point, right? He says the dad is like a roach. Well, that's how they're treated. That's how they live, as opposed to this family living up there in one of the most beautiful houses on Letterboxd. They sometimes have like stills from a movie, and I was like, what movie? It's Parasite. It was like a shot of one of the actresses inside the house. Like, oh, it's Parasite. It's just beautiful in the way that by the end of it, it had me in tears. We've had this discussion, I know we'll talk about it in a little bit, that you and I see it very differently. You called it a La La Land-esque ending. I refuse to see it any other way. I see it as a Whiplash-esque ending, but performance-wise, we were talking about him possibly getting something for director. We're both in hopes of making it for Best Picture, because I truly believe that this is going to be one of those movies, as I mentioned with the subtitles, that is going to transcend that. A lot of people still don't, I want to say our viewers do, but a lot of people don't read subtitles for various reasons. Some reasons do make sense, like they can't keep up with it. Maybe you're dyslexic, whatever it is. I have heard those as being arguments for it. Man, if you can find a dubbed version for it, I'm not going to shame you. Watch this movie. That's the beauty of it. Alina always describes foreign films as this, and it was from a quote that we also got from Celine Sciamma, who did Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Not our number 2 of the year, right? You're with me on that one?
It's definitely up there.
She had said, when it comes to foreign language films, the language doesn't come from here. In cinema, the language is here. And I think you'll capture that not only with this movie, but I hope this becomes a gateway for a lot of other people. Because like you said, this being nominated for something as big as Best Picture, as much as we disagree with the Oscars year in, year out, there is you may not agree, the prestigiousness to it.
It shines a spotlight on the movie in a way
exactly.
that, foreign films often don't get the spotlight.
And if it lets people see his previous movies, more Korean cinema, French, whatever it is.
Let's talk about his previous films for a second in comparison to this, because we're both people who really liked Bong Joon-ho's filmography. As I mentioned, I think Snowpiercer is probably my favorite of the films he's made.
Yep.
But that was probably until I saw Parasite, and I don't know. I mean, I probably want to see it again to just say it for sure, because I really do love a lot of what he's done. But this is just, I feel like every scene of this movie adds to the world of it, and I felt myself being hypnotized by the story and just falling into the world.
I remember you said there's a specific bit, and I know we've just been skirting the spoiler section. There's a specific bit that for you said, this is why I go to the theaters.
Yes.
Talk about it.
There's a moment that happens, and I don't think it's a spoiler at all, because there's a lot of big moments in this movie.
You can know the whole
in particular
thing of this
movie. where you just feel like, I can't believe the movie has been keeping this from me too.
Yep.
And I love that feeling when a movie is just like, it's ready to flip the entire thing upside down on you in a way that you weren't expecting.
But it was there the whole time.
Oh, yeah.
It was there the whole time, and that's what's crazy. You told me to look up his filmography. I want to mention some here and there just to, talk about some of his previous movies and how they really connect to this. Like, I'm not kidding when I say he takes bits of Okja, right? If you were to describe Okja in one line, as that being one of your favorite movies of, what was it, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Okja being... Go ahead.
The simple pitch would be it's like E.T., but with a genetically engineered pig. And it's also like an meat industry movie.
Yeah, even corporation to that point. And this movie, I would say, takes those parts of where he's talking about the different class that Okja was the pig or Okja was the girl?
Okja was the pig.
What was the girl's name?
I forget.
Because she comes from the mountains of nowhere, and they send Jake Gyllenhaal over there to go get her.
Right. You can even see this with Snowpiercer, yeah, how it's the back of the train is the lower class, and the front of the train is the higher class, and they have a much better lives and accommodations and food.
And you have to make a decision on whether to go left or whether to go right. I'm not even going to spoil any bit of Memories of Murder, other than the fact that this movie came out in 2003. They just caught the guy, a month ago? That's not even a spoiler to the movie because that's a part of the movie. The fact that the guy had never gotten caught. And that movie resurfaced recently again as well. Some of my favorites, The Host, that was one of the first ones that I had seen. That's what really got me into it. And I don't know if you've ever seen The Host. I remember when it was on Netflix. And that's what got me into this whole spiral, which caused me to go to Blockbuster and rent Memories of Murder. But just looking back at I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Kang-ho Song, who's also been in Taxi Driver, who's also been in a different Taxi Driver, a bunch of other movies in Korean cinema that this man has had an entire career with. He has played the father figure. He has played the guy running away from freaking sea monsters. If there was anyone to get an award or a nomination, I would love for it to be him. I would love for it to be him.
His arc in the movie is particularly devastating, and he's such a good actor at portraying that. You know, I think he kind of has this really congenial, friendly energy just from the start. He seems like a great, like a great hang in the movie, but there's so much more behind that performance and the way that it builds to this like crescendo towards the end. It's really a testament to what a great actor he is. So I'm glad that he's kind of been put in the spotlight by this movie.
And the collaboration just with him and Bong. Like, they've been working with each other for decades. He was also in Memories of Murder. He was in The Host. I think he had a part in Snowpiercer as well.
Yes.
So, like, that's the beauty of it, is seeing that collaboration come to what is, after decades, the biggest movie they worked on. That's insane to me. I don't know what else you had to say about it.
Well, so I want to talk about a little bit about how this movie kind of... I think it's a lot of really small pleasures that amount to like a bigger pleasure, right? Like we have been talking more generally about how we think this is a great story. This is a great class allegory. This is a really thoughtful film that positions one family in opposition with another and shows the ways that they're similar and the ways that they're different. And I love all those elements about it. But it's also a movie that just from moment to moment is so fun and clever. You mentioned how they're almost like roaches. Well, there's a moment in the movie where they're fumigating the street they live on, which you're talking about, and they leave their windows open to get free extermination. It's just those little clever things.
When, not realizing
there's a tutoring dynamic in the movie, and one of the first things that this tutor does to his student is grab her arm and check her pulse to see whether or not she's stressed. And like that's the kind of thing where it's like you're expecting a scene where someone teaches somebody else about language or about how to solve a math problem, and instead they talk about like your heart's racing, and those are the moments in movies where it kind of takes you in a way that you're not expecting, but is still engaging. Bong Joon-ho is so good at keeping you interested from moment to moment, all the little decisions they make, whether it's the stories they tell in order to kind of infiltrate the life of this rich family, or it's the clever ways in which they kind of scheme to stay in the picture. I just found this movie to be so pleasurable from moment to moment.
I agree. Especially because before you even get to those twists, all those little nuances that you're talking about, that could have been the entire 2-hour movie. Absolutely. And then they go downstairs.
I would have been totally satisfied with it.
And then they go downstairs, and this is where, again, if you have not seen the movie, we highly recommend you going to go see it. But again, it's one of those movies where they tweeted me all the plot points. They tweeted me links of the movie because it had dropped. It's been out overseas for a while. Even if you know everything that we're about to dive into with spoilers, as we explain our thoughts on it, you could still go into it and have a fantastic time with it. So let's talk about
I will say there is something to the experience of being completely surprised.
Always, yeah. That's why I want to make.
So if you don't want to check out the spoiler section, feel free. There's a lot of spoiler-free intercut videos here on our channel and on our podcast feed. But we want to dive into spoilers for the people who have had a chance to see Parasite, who will see it soon as it's about to be released in theaters. Art, the movie. takes a turn about halfway through. Again, spoilers, when the former housekeeper returns to the house and they discover a hidden bunker where her husband had been living. So what were you thinking during this reveal? Because I was going nuts.
That was the part you told me when I was tell me something about the movie, and you just said I would just say this: the bunker reveal. That's why I go to the cinema. He says cinema, not even the theater, the cinema. For me, at that point in the movie, this entire family, as you can see from the posters, from the trailers, has found a way to be able to get the tutor, to be able to get the mom as the maid, to be able to get the dad as the chauffeur, be able to get the entire family to infiltrate this household to pretty much just take it over. To live within this rich family. But what you don't realize is that the other people who they moved out, almost a little bit of a gentrification message there. After they got pushed out, she comes back because she actually had some investments within this household. I just want to mention... Go ahead.
No, there's that really interesting element to the movie where they talk about how the housekeeper has lived at the house longer than the family who's actually living there.
I completely forgot about that bit. Yeah. She has more history there. Thank you for saying that, because I was about to go on a bunch of other recommendations. The Last Black Man in San Francisco.
Right.
This entire year has just had so much. If you enjoyed this movie, that bit right there about being in a house before anybody else was and then having to be moved out of the area you were in.
How a home is more than just the four walls where you live.
Last Black Man in San Francisco. Go watch that one. Something else Parasite dives into. We had mentioned the Joker when it comes to the class side of things, except this one knows the message that it's going for. Another one, Knives Out, which I don't think you've caught yet, right?
I have not, no.
Again, another murder mystery where I've been saying the murder mystery is there and it's going to feed you. But it has this other storyline going in that also deals with that 99% 1% idea with class. And their final shot, while also very, very good, very similar to this one in Parasite as well. There's a lot in this movie that resonated with me. Maybe it's because I've been seeing so many. I mean, this goes back to last year's Blind Spotted and even some scenes in Black Panther when it came to Oakland that I adored. When you go downstairs and you see that she's already had something in there, what really starts hitting you is the line that the son has been saying throughout the entire movie in the first half. It's blaringly obvious.
This is so metaphorical.
You get there, and this lady walks in, and it turns out she's had her husband in there the entire time. Mm-hmm. I sat there, as I do. For most movies, it usually happens twice a year, and I look over at Alina and I go, is this it? It was it. From there, it takes me on this journey where I was like, what in the world are we going to do here? I don't know where you want to go next to this. If you want to stay on the bunker, if you want to stay on the big scene that happens that causes the rift. Or some scenes before it.
The movie becomes something a little bit different in that moment. It becomes, whereas it was taking place over the course of what felt like several weeks, perhaps several months, suddenly it shifts into a, by the minute kind of thriller.
That's true. Switches up on you.
That to me, that's a really fun turn in the movie, just because it becomes so anxious and it becomes so much like, the first half of the movie, you're kind of wondering, are they going to figure this out? Are they going to out themselves? And then it becomes a little bit more dangerous too, because they're now talking about exposing each other, and there's threats of violence at each other, and it ratchets the film up to another level, while keeping it true to like the same ideas that are there in the first of the way that this family kind of is able to this poorer family is sustained by its connection to the other family, and how that
Parasites.
Connection exactly, and how that connection ultimately robbed this other person and this other family in a way of that lifestyle and of that comfort.
Okay, let's go. Yeah, keep going.
It brings up the ideas of like who's entitled to what and what is meant to be shared and what is meant to be held. And, I think it becomes a really, really fascinating examination of the ways in which there's almost limited comfort available in modern society.
Yep. I heard that there was a quote someone said the other day. It's like, just give your time. There's room for everybody up here. Sometimes there's not. You know, not everyone can be the top 10 Hot Billboard 100. Not everyone can be in the trending page. Not everybody. It's just not. Sometimes, you know, it's what Us was really trying to achieve. I know it worked more for you, so this would be a very interesting discussion in where Us, you know, like one of the biggest things that he said was about those above, those below.
Us versus them.
And the fact that the idea of tethering and it being your spitting image shows you that the big decision that's made in the movie. And I'm sure most of you have seen Us. So I'm just going off of the limb. This is me, in case you haven't seen Us. I'm about to spoil Us.
Yeah, spoiling Parasite and Us at the same time.
But I feel like everyone's seen it. With Us, that whole idea of the metaphor being, you know, it's always with an us there's a them, and with the us side of things you want to be able to, as the movie shows you a lot, material things, right? The girl wanted to be the best runner, the mom had the friends who were completely full of themselves, cutting up their faces because of plastic surgery, the dad wanted to get the boat because the other friend had it, all these materialistic things always trying to one up each other. And then when you finally get to the idea of what the metaphor is supposed to be, where she stripped a version of herself to stay down below over here, this gets it, because Us also has this entire other metaphor of a government subplot, which kind of changes things a little bit, which it kind of adds to it, but I feel like it's a lot more muddled as opposed to here, where there literally is a stripping of a right from another person that I think hits a lot more than trying to make it a horror. It didn't need to be a horror. Because what is this? Is this a thriller? Is this a heist film? Is this a horror film? What is it to you? It's Parasite in theaters October. Yeah, that's why I love it so much. And I think that's why he's able to capture the emotions. I started off by saying it feels like it's 5 different directors. I love that so much. To go back and shout out another movie of this year, Lulu Wang's
The Farewell.
The Farewell. One of your favorites as well. Is this above it?
These are top 2 right now for me.
Nice.
I told you this is my number 1.
I got mine right here. Uncut, Portrait, Parasite, the holy trinity of movies. I don't know if you can see it. With The Farewell, one of the things while she was pitching that was that it was half Chinese, half American. It was a little bit of a comedy, but it's very sad. Her grandma's dying. But no, it's it's coming of age. It's all these different things, and they told her, figure out the box you want to put it in. That's very Hollywoodish. Whereas overseas, nah, that's not the case. It's tell the story you want to tell. Not that we don't have that here with a lot of independent films, but I love how this movie is able to capture a comedy. It's able to capture a thriller.
It's such a unique identity.
And that's what makes it feel more like life, because Lulu's quote, which I love about that when they told her that, it's like, yeah, but what genre is it? It's like, it's my life. What genre is my life? And I think the way that you're able to capture the highs and lows of both of these families, what I wish ends on a high, you believe ends on the lowest of lows, I think is very inspirational, because then by the end of it, which is the part that really got me, as one of the biggest reoccurring things is having a plan, right? Mm-hmm. Having a plan. We see that the people up above do have a plan. The family living in the house have so much of a plan that they got a chauffeur, that they got a tutor to be able to teach their daughters. They have all of that assistance that Joker's movie kind of had as a theme. If you had the government assistance, if you have the ability to have all of these things to help you, you will be able to succeed in life. When you're another family who can't even close the windows because you have the extermination, all of that coming towards you, it's a little bit different. I want to talk about that whole idea between the father and the son arguing over having a plan or not having a plan. Because that, and the way that ends up climaxing, the point that leads to, that's the part that got me the most. And we see it a little bit differently.
Right. So what did you... Do we want to talk about the ending first? Or do we want to talk about
we can,
the kind of last... I was kind of curious about your thoughts about that last confrontation, and there's this running thing in the film about Mr. Kim's smell, which I found really interesting, because they really love, they really embrace Mr. Kim, and then all the new helpers, they sort of welcome them into their family. But there's this scene where the poor family overhears the richer parents discussing the father's smell.
Yep.
And it's this thing where even though they're kind to them, they still see them as others in a way. Mm-hmm. And that sort of gets called back in a very interesting way when the father, the rich father, mm-hmm. is moving a body and sort of cringes his nose because he smells something. I wondered what you thought about that moment and that whole element of Parasite.
This comes right after the point where they're all sitting as a family, and the wife tells him that he's like a cockroach.
Yes.
And he gets pissed off.
And he's hiding underneath the table.
And he ends up in the crawl spaces. He ends up behind the walls, living behind the... Okay. A lot of movies this year have been trying to capture that bit. Us said it as well. Her whole specific performance, which I'm sure she'll get nominated for, Lupita Nyong'o, which I'm curious, what's it going to be for? Like, what's it going to say? Lupita Nyong'o for what's the character? I don't know. Is it her overall performance for it? I don't know how that works because they're two different characters. Yeah. She was directed by Jordan Peele to act like a cockroach. He is deemed a cockroach and is forced to live like a cockroach. Not for, I mean, again, I love Lupita's performance as a cockroach. No one else acted like that. I don't understand like why she had, it's like act like a cockroach because it's like the metaphor. Cool, but you were also a regular human being, so I don't see why you had to act like a cockroach or, I don't know, tell the person, hey, do you remember when you did this to me? I'm going to expose you in front of your own family and there's the movie. Here, it feels like it. Here, I've seen people. I've seen The Help who have been called that. And you got to come in the next day and you got to drive them. And you got to come in the next day and you got to feed their kids. And you got to come in the next day and do all that stuff. I mean, we have that movie. That's not just the movie. The Help is literally what they're called. And like you called it, The Others. That's how he feels. And he's put himself in a position where every day, day in and day out, he's got to see another man who can provide for his family while his own family calls him a cockroach. When it turns out he smells, and you don't know you smell. Until someone tells you smell.
You never recognize your own smell.
Oh, that's the part. Like that. He got that emotion, Like that. He's capturing emotions, like you said, with all the little nuances and like feeling heartbeats. Things that you're like, go to a movie to see a spectacle. But
it's kind of funny because the family's talking about the smell at some point. And their smell. And they say it's the smell of the sub-basement, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's not their smell that they just have. It's not the smell
that they get because of their environment.
It's the smell from their home. It's the smell from where they come from.
That's the case for a lot of people.
They can't quite remove their family legacy in a way. Even if they get into this better position, even if they're welcomed into a life of luxury, there still is this divide where they're not quite part of the family. And I thought it was very keenly observed and not something that they beat you over the head with in the movie. I thought it was a really, really great subtlety. It, of course, leads to this moment in the end where the father, and again, this is spoilers for the very end of Parasite, but whatever, at this point, the father is behind the walls and in the bunker and kind of living, sending out Morse code messages to his son. And the movie has this really interesting coda, which I know you wanted to talk about, where the son talks about how one day he'll have his degree and he'll have a job and he'll get the money and he'll move into that house. And at that point, the father will be able to come back outside. And there's a really beautiful shot of the father and son embracing. And then the movie returns us back to the sub-basement. So to me, that's where the La La Land type ending idea comes in, where it gives you an idea of what happiness could be. It shows it to you, and then it brings you back to reality. To me, it felt like it was a fantasy, but I know you didn't feel that way.
I agree it's a fantasy. I refuse to see it as a fantasy, a whole other thing, I understand that the ending to Whiplash also isn't the greatest ending. He's come out and said it. Chazelle. That's not the way I see it. That's not the way I interpret it, right?
Right, that Chazelle sees it as like an ominous ending, but there is a read of the Whiplash ending that's kind of inspirational.
Exactly, and he's aware of that, and that's the route I use it. Some people even see La La Land like that. They refuse to believe. Say, hey, you know what? I don't believe in death of the author. They don't gotta die. But you're more than welcome to have your interpretation. That's the beauty of movies. Totally. And these are ones that it wants to push both. Like you said, there's always a discussion between the two. Have a plan or don't have a plan. I think for a lot of, I don't want to speak for all minorities, but I'll kind of put it the way that, what's his name did in The Neon Demon, director of The Neon Demon.
Winding Refn?
He had said, yes, Nicholas Winding Refn, with that movie that he doesn't believe that he doesn't believe a lot of things come down to race and whatnot. It was thing for a white guy to say, but he definitely says, he's like, no matter where you're in, and it's true, this is in Korea. Yet there's a difference between these Koreans. He says there'll always be one difference. He believes it's more beauty. But then with that came the idea of class. That no matter where you are, that's always going to be the divide.
Right.
Even if you get rid of any of the other ones, he believes beauty and classism are going to be the things that always differentiate you. And it gets to a point where this man, Mr. Kim, needs to make a decision in that backyard. And it pushes him to a point that I believe a lot of fathers are pushed to, or a lot of authority figures within their family who need to protect them get pushed to make a decision. His was to attack the family, which has him retreating, has him pretty much going to jail, right? Like any family member in
it's a prison, somewhat of his own making, but a prison nonetheless.
Exactly. And some people get pushed because they aren't able to get a job that they got to do what? They got to sell on the side. They got to do whatever it is on the side to be able to provide for their family. That is Kim. That is Mr. Kim with his family. And he doesn't have a time to make a plan because if he stops to make a plan, what happens? He can't feed his family. But his son has that ability to go through. And I told you that for me, it resonated a lot when it comes to immigrant parents coming elsewhere. Their only job is to get you to that place and not get kicked out. Try to get you a better family. And it's the next generation who gets the chance to write a plan. And that's exactly what the damn son does at the end, right?
The movie has a really interesting depiction of the ways in which one generation strives to set up the next generation.
Yeah.
And obviously, the dynamic is very different in that the rich family is able to set up the next generation.
It's sad.
With private lessons and all sorts of coddling and everything they could ever want. But, the way that you mentioned that Mr. Kim, or whatever his real character's name is, the way that he chooses to provide or to support is different, but it's still a dedicated father,
he doesn't care less than the rich dad,
and potentially more.
Yeah, he doesn't have what the rich dad does, right? It's something we've talked about, the internship type of idea where unpaid internships only help people who don't need to balance another job. Right. Try to take an unpaid internship when you still need to feed your family. You won't be able to. So there goes your entire idea of an education. And that sucks. So that's why it really resonated with me at the end, because as much as I love Whiplash, right? And I've been very vocal on this being the movie that's dethroned Whiplash, the 2014 Damien Chazelle directed film. That's ending invigorates me. I love it. Different ways to see it, I love it. But the ending of Whiplash is for himself. The ending of this movie and what the kid decides to do to push himself over the edge to make sure it doesn't happen isn't just for himself, but it's for his entire family, specifically for his dad. And without it, just talking about it right now and saying this for the first time, without a doubt, this movie's better than Whiplash. And I get it. I know that it takes you back to the basement and makes you go like, "Oop, gotcha. That plan may not actually come true," and it's true. And that sucks because it may not always come true.
Yeah.
But I believe it does. I believe that's Bong's. I don't know the story of his father, but I see this as him being like, I did it. I made a movie. I've been making all these movies in Korea. The other year, I just made a movie in English with American actors. And I decided to come back and make this Korean movie with the same people I've been making this movie with. And damn, do I hope it goes all the way. Damn, do I hope it gets the Best Picture nom. Because that to me is the alternate ending, I guess, in a sense. So that's all I'll say. I love this movie. I hope everyone gets a chance to catch it. And I'm curious to hear different interpretations. This is just my interpretation of it.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this to you off camera in my immediate reaction to the movie, but this is a movie you've been hyping up to me for a little while. You've been talking about it as best of the decade, your favorite of the year, how it's just an amazing, amazing film. And I don't like to hear that kind of hype sometimes because it puts your expectations in a certain place, and it's almost like if you tell me that now I want to see how it's not the best film. But and I'm not gonna try and sell somebody a false bill of goods. It's not like the movie to end all movies forever, the end of cinema. It's without a doubt my favorite movie of the year, and it achieved that even with the high expectations I put on it. It achieved that even though I have really, really loved Bong Joon-ho's previous filmography. I still found a lot to really, really appreciate and love about this movie. So I'm, like you, very curious to see how more people react to it, how people who don't normally embrace foreign films and reading subtitles react to it, because I do think it moves quickly, and it's engaging enough that hopefully you can forget about the subtitles thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a great movie. So
And above that, I'm very curious to know the Korean perspective, because I watch a lot of Spanish films, right? And I was like, oh, I see. Oh, if you're American, you're not going to get what that means as the scene that takes place in Mexico. A bunch of French films, British films, Korean films, where there's going to be nuances that we don't get because we don't live in that environment. So I'm curious to see how that comes out as well. But man,
yeah,
I told you, with all the hype, did it still not hit?
absolutely. It hit hard. It's one of those movies. I mean, I tweeted about this after, but it's like you walk out of the movie, it's like, how am I supposed to just go about my day like it's a normal day now?
Yeah.
Like I saw that movie at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then I had to just go to a cafe and order a coffee and not
chill for a bit.
Tell the barista about how amazing this movie was that I just
Please,
watched.
no peach syrup. Take that all away from me. I'm telling you, to me, it's like we were able to be there on the first screening of Wizard of Oz when the colors came out of nowhere. I feel like we were there at Sundance or wherever. No, yeah, Sundance for Reservoir Dogs, and then wherever Pulp Fiction premiered. I think that was Cannes. I feel like we're at a time where we're able to witness this fantastic movie that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, it's going to be a part of a curriculum, dude. It's going to be the movie you have to watch. I think Moonlight's another one that's a part of the mix as well. And I believe so is this one of this decade. It's one of the fantastic ones, one of the best movies of the decade, just to learn cinema alone. This is that movie that I wish I could have rented at Blockbuster in my sophomore year when I always talk about that one specific summer where I just rented a bunch of movies that the Blockbuster guy recommended me. It's the reason I do YouTube videos on film today, because I wanted to be that dude.
Right.
Blockbuster closed down. And yet this director, Bong Joon-ho at Telluride, knowing he has one of the best movies. JoJo won TIFF, right? Mm-hmm. How many extra JoJo screenings were added? How many Parasite? Exactly.
Every single night.
And yet, what did he say was his favorite movie of the year, and he believes everyone should go watch instead of Parasite?
Uncut Gems, boy.
Go watch Parasite. Go watch Uncut Gems. Go watch Portrait of a Lady of Fire. 2019
go watch The Farewell.
And The Farewell. All the movies that we mentioned here. Even Us. Yeah. Why not? Go watch all of them. Dude, 2019. Wow.
Yeah, man.
Been
we'll
blessed.
have to have the 2014 versus 2019 conversation
yes, we
later.
Do.
We're going to have the best of the decade conversation later. But I believe that's all for this edition of Let Us Explain on Intercut. You can catch more from me, Zach Shevich, by following me on Twitter, Instagram, or Letterboxd at ZShevich, or check out my YouTube channel, youtube.com/multiplexshowart. Where can people find more from you? You
can find me at The A to Z Show on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, as well as Let Me Explain, a bunch of stuff over there. As we continue these Let You Explain, or Let Us Explains over here, pretty much everything else that we do over here on the Intercut Podcast.
Yes, you can listen to every episode of the Intercut podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, whatever your favorite podcatcher is. I like Overcast. And then make sure you're subscribed not just to the audio feed, but to the video feed as well on youtube.com/IntercutPod, where you can catch our bright, smiling faces as we break down the latest in entertainment. Find new episodes of Intercut every week, as well as our Let Us Explains, which we're posting a lot of as we get into award season with all these great movies out. We talked about Joker. We're going to talk about Portrait of a Lady on Fire and Uncut Gems and a whole bunch of great stuff. So please leave us a comment, like the videos, consider heading over to iTunes and leaving us a five-star review. Like our Instagram, Facebook, Twitter pages. All of them are at IntercutPod to get updates throughout the week from me, from Art, from all the guests that we feature here on Intercut. And thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, nobody imitates North Korean news anchors like you.